Hello viewers and welcome to yet another special video production from Cardboard of the Rings, the bi-weekly podcast about the Lord of the Rings the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. This is Mitch, and joining me as always is Matthew, if you'd like to say hello.
Hi everyone.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about what the viewers can expect in this video?
Well, today we are cracking open the very first adventure pack, The Hunt for Gollum. We'll be going through all of the player cards and giving our thoughts and opinions on their usefulness and maybe some relevant combos.
So, Matthew just about said it, we're going to be going ahead and taking a look at our very first adventure pack of our very first adventure pack cycle, The Hunt for Gollum of Shadows of Mirkwood. We're going to start with our hero card and then progressively work our way through all of the different player cards. So, given the context of our card pool, which is just going to be this adventure pack, and of course our core set player and hero cards, we're going to go ahead and give a little bit of an analysis and opinion on each of these cards. So to start things off, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our first brand new hero, which is Bilbo Baggins of the Lore Sphere. He comes in at 9 threat, 1 willpower, 1 attack strength, 2 defense strength, and 2 hit points. He is a hobbit, and his card simply reads, the first player draws 1 additional card in the resource phase. The natural comparison for Bilbo Baggins here is going to be to the existing lore hero Barivor. So he's a little bit less expensive threat-wise, he's not nearly such a capable defender, quester, or attacker, but at the same time his effect is always going to be active, it's always going to be benefiting the first player without any need to exhaust Bilbo. I do like that he has a decent defensive value. He's probably going to be able to contribute a little bit better to the early stages of the game than Barivor, since he'll be able to do that 1 willpower in addition to his card draw, but that 2 hit points is really of concern to me, because as a possible defending character, it doesn't take much to go wrong to end up with a dead Bilbo, and as pretty much a dedicated quester, he's really susceptible to quest effects. But what are your thoughts on our first new hero, Matthew?
Yeah, the first thing I think that's of interest is that we spoke a few times in our core set videos about how a hero's threat cost is typically the sum of his attributes. In this case, Bilbo's is not. He adds up to 6 points, whereas he has a 9 threat. So that's sort of interesting, which makes him a sort of expensive hero, all things considered. At this point in the game, super exciting to have a new hero. I do like that he affects all players equally, in that it's the first player that draws a card. Otherwise, I think I mostly agree with you. His stats are relatively weak, as they should be for a hobbit. One thing, as the game progresses, we start to get more and more hobbit cards. They seem to be sort of developing a hobbit synergy with some of the more recent sets, so perhaps he'll become a little bit better once we can have a dedicated hobbit deck. But as for now, I think he's okay, but certainly nothing stellar.
I think my major concern with him is, just as you point out, this is the first hero where his attributes aren't equal to his threat. We're essentially missing out on 3 entire attribute points worth of threat from Bilbo. So for such a squishy, susceptible to early game death or death from some sort of treachery during staging, it's a little bit unsettling to have all of that threat value there. I think another major concern for me with Bilbo is, whereas in a 1 or 2 player game, the alternation of the first player drawing, the additional card is probably not that big of a deal, but especially if you're really trying to dig for some sort of card, whether it be Northern Tracker or Forest Snare or Feint, whatever it happens to be, I really think Barivor can pull ahead in just being able to laser focus and have one player consistently draw those 2 cards, where Bilbo, maybe you're really wanting the last player to draw that card when the first player is picking up the bonus. So I guess that's really another concern of mine there. I think one strong combo card with Bilbo, given that he does have card draw, is Protector of Lorien. So if you are using him as more of a defensive character role, you can maybe use some of that card surplus in your hand to bolster his defense, just in case there's some sort of unexpectedly high attack value that would jeopardize killing this expensive hobbit.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and move on to our leadership cards, the first of which is an attachment, Dunedain Mark. It has a cost of 1, it has a trait Signal, and it reads attached to a hero, and that hero gains +1 attack strength. There's also an action in which you may pay 1 resource from the attached hero's pool to attach Dunedain Mark to another hero. I think this is an excellent card. I think it could work great on Dune here to give him a little bit of an attack boost when he's sniping in the staging area. But of course, it could be great on a lot of other heroes. It could go on Legolas to help him kill enemies more easily to then make progress on the quest. I also like the flexibility of its action. I've never actually paid 1 resource to move a Dunedain Mark to another hero, but the fact that you have the option to do so, and if you happen to have the extra resource sort of floating around and your buddy or another hero could use it to bolster its attack, I think that's pretty handy.
Right, I definitely think so. Just like you pointed out, there are very few ways to bolster attack power in this game. We have things like Dwarven Axe and Blade of Gondolin, but those are both a little bit situational. So for the former, you really only see the biggest effect when it's attached to a dwarf. And for Blade of Gondolin, unless you're specifically attacking orcs, it's not really doing you any good. But Dunedain Mark is very indiscriminate in that no matter what, whichever hero it's stuck to gains that +1 attack power no matter what he or she is attacking. It's not exclusive to any one race. You can shift it around, so just like you said, if, say, the other player, after you're done attacking, has some enemies on his or her side of the table, then you can go ahead and toss this over there. They can benefit from that +1 attack, or if you've got multiple copies. I also think something nice about this is it kind of helps players to overcome a little bit of a reliance on, say, Gimli and tactics. So I know when we were playing through all those core set scenarios, we were definitely seeing a ton of combat ability coming from Gimli specifically. And if players are more able to rely on, like you said, Legolas, or maybe attacking enemies in the staging area with Dune here, maybe just dropping this on Aragorn, it certainly gives players more options and probably a more interesting style of play.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose that leads us to our second leadership card in our first adventure pack, which is the event Campfire Tales. It is a cost of 1, and it reads quite simply, action. Each player draws 1 card. And this may seem like a very simple effect, but I really like it. I'm generally not much of a solo player, and I think the effect of 1 resource to thin your deck slightly is maybe a little bit questionable then, but 2, 3, or 4 player games, that effect scales very, very quickly, so up to 4 cards for 1 leadership resource I think is great. It provides a source of card advantage when really all leadership has for that is Valiant Sacrifice. But I think it's much more playable. You don't have to wait for a character to be leaving play, and as soon as you have 2 players in the game, you're drawing just as many cards.
Yeah, I think both of these leadership cards in our first adventure pack really drive home the theme to me that we spoke about in our core set leadership review of Jack of all trades, master of none. The first card, Dunedain Mark, leadership sort of creeping into the attack strength territory, whereas here in Campfire Tales, it's sort of encroaching on lore's realm of card draw. And I think that's okay, right? The effect isn't as great as Lore's ability to draw cards, but it's still pretty good. I think it's a cheap event. I'll probably be including it in decks in our upcoming Progression Series videos, so keep an eye out for it, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah, sounds good. And really the only other thing I want to mention is it just gives leadership more options. So even within the realm of leadership card draw, if you're not running a deck with very many allies, or you're just not expecting many allies to be leaving play, then this is certainly an alternative. And Valiant Sacrifice, I guess, just like Bilbo, is a little bit less focused. So Campfire Tales can affect everyone, whereas Valiant Sacrifice, maybe the player that already has 16 cards in his hand is, the one losing an ally, so...
Right, absolutely. So that's it for our leadership cards, and now we're moving on to our tactics cards. The first card is an ally, Winged Guardian, with a cost of 2, 0 willpower, 0 attack strength, 4 defense strength, and 1 hit point. The Winged Guardian is both a creature and an eagle. Sentinel, Winged Guardian cannot have restricted attachments. And then there's a force effect. After an attack in which Winged Guardian defends resolves, pay 1 tactics resource or discard the Winged Guardian from play. This is really the beginning of the Eagle's synergy. I think he's a great blocker. He gets better in future sets in this cycle, and then even future sets like Heirs of Numenor, where we're either using defense strength or attack strength to quest. Solid card. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think 4 defense on an ally blows past Dino Thor's 3, which is the highest we had seen so far, except for Gandalf's 4, I suppose. But that 4 defense allows this 1 hit point creature to soak up 5 out of the 6 points from a Hill Troll attack, so not only is it a good chump blocker, but it's something that can soak up a ton of damage there. It can consistently block so many attacks. There certainly is that upkeep that you have to pay in the form of 1 tactics resource every single time you defend, but if you don't have the resource, it's not the end of the world to simply discard this creature. I love the fact that it starts off with Sentinel, so if your teammate gets some sort of enemy attacking him or her, you're able to help them out as well. No attachments is a little bit of a shame, but I don't think we've seen many attachments that can be played on allies. In fact, I don't think we've seen any at this point, and our next card is eventually going to work perfectly with Winged Guardian. So our second tactics card in this set is an event called The Eagles Are Coming, which is a 0 cost. It has trait Eagle, and it is action. Search the top 5 cards of your deck for any number of Eagle cards and add them to your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. And I definitely like the fact that this card is free. I like that it itself counts as an Eagle card, so it kind of generates combos with itself. But the only problem is, since this is the first time we've seen any Eagle cards, and now we have 2, the probability is really, really low of searching 5 cards out of, say, a 43-card deck to pull an Eagle with this effect. So I think the likelihood is pretty good that you're not going to get anything from this card, and then it's more of a detriment to your deck than a benefit.
Right. The Eagles Are Coming is near worthless in the hunt for Gollum, but as this Shadows of Mirkwood cycle evolves, we're getting, I think, Eagle cards almost every single pack, and by the end of the cycle, there's quite a few Eagle cards, and so the Eagles Are Coming really does rise in its value. So that's it for tactics, and we're on to Spirit. The first of which is the Westfold Horsebreaker, who is an ally with a cost of 2, 1 willpower, 0 attack strength, 1 defense strength, and 1 hit point. He's a Rohan ally, and his action reads, discard Westfold Horsebreaker to choose and ready a hero. To me, this card is really a lesser version of Unexpected Courage, and it certainly has its uses. It could be a cheap chump blocker. You could commit it to the quest, though it's pretty fragile, and the treacheries that deal damage to questing characters could knock this guy out. Otherwise, though, I think it's a pretty good ally. As I've said many times, Rohan trait hasn't been developed yet, but I'm sure it will be in the future, in which case this ally might start to see more play.
Yeah. When you compare this to Unexpected Courage, it certainly does have that effect. I guess what I immediately think of, and what I think about maybe substituting this guy for in my Spirit decks, is the Wandering Toque. So for a similar cost, he's got 1 fewer hit point, just like you said. He's remarkably fragile, so even though he does have a little bit of questing potential with that 1 willpower, the prospect of sending a character that can die to an effect like the Necromancer's Reach or Evil Storm is a little bit unnerving. His ability sounds pretty good in that it's kind of a one-time use unexpected courage. I really like that you don't have to exhaust him in order to discard and ready a hero, but I think the problem with this guy is it's not too often that you're going to come up with the perfect situation to use him. Maybe occasionally you'll get an extra, say, defense plus attack out of Gimli, or another few progress tokens from Legolas, another shot to the staging area from Dunhir, maybe a couple cards from Barivor. But it seems like for a one-time use, it's pretty expensive. The likelihood of losing him to some sort of accident is also pretty strong, and he's a very incapable defender, so I'm not so sure about this card. I think it sounds okay in theory, but having had the experience, obviously before we started doing this series of using a lot of these cards, it's just been very, very rarely that I've actually been able to benefit from the Westfold Horsebreaker. So he's great with things like Stand and Fight and Dwarven Tomb to try and get as many uses out of him as possible, but given how precious spirit resources are, I'm a little bit hesitant to sink 2 into a character like this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we might as well go ahead and cover our second spirit card, which is an event, Mustering the Rohirrim, which is a cost of 1, and similar to the Eagles Are Coming, this is action. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for any one Rohan ally card and add it to your hand. Then shuffle the other cards back into your deck. I do like the fact that this is 10 cards, so it's, twice as many as the Eagles Are Coming. Of course, it's no longer free, and you're only retrieving a single card. And really the problem with this is the same thing as the Eagles Are Coming, so we've yet to see a really in-depth development of that Rohan trait, and all of the existing Rohan allies all belong to different spheres. We have the Westfold Horsebreaker that we just talked about being from the Spirit Sphere. We have Snowborn Scout, of course, from Leadership. We have the Horseback Archer from Tactics, and the unique lore ally Gleowine. So there's really no linchpin, there's no really, really good Rohan ally that you're going to be searching for, and unless you're integrating a lot of other spheres into your deck, your options are really quite limited. So, Mustering the Rohirrim, yet again, seems like something where we're definitely going to have to wait for some more development of this sphere.
Right, I don't really think I have much to add. The Eagles Are Coming by the end of this cycle is a great card. Mustering the Rohirrim up until today, it's still pretty much a worthless card. So that does it for Spirit, which leads us to the Rivendell Minstrel, our first lore card, which happens to be an ally. She has a cost of 3, willpower of 2, attack strength and defense strength of 0, 1 hit point. She's a Noldor ally, and her response reads, after you play Rivendell Minstrel from your hand, search your deck for 1 song card and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So we haven't really seen any references to song cards yet. So Mitch, do you want to tell us about the first song card in the game?
Sure. So songs are something that we're going to see developed through the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, and the very first of these is called Song of Kings, which is the second neutral card we've seen in the game. So accompanying Gandalf in belonging to no sphere whatsoever and being able to be paid for by any resource, Song of Kings is a 1-cost attachment. It is trait Song and reads, attached to a hero, attached hero gains a leadership resource icon. So this allows whatever hero you stick this to count as a leadership character in addition to whatever kind it is. All of their resources are going to be able to be used as leadership sphere resources, so it allows for some resource fixing. It allows players to do tricks like splashing leadership cards like Steward of Gondor into a deck that otherwise wouldn't have any leadership heroes. So it's definitely a pretty powerful card. It's a very fascinating thing to be developed. But back to Rivendell Minstrel, what are your thoughts about our ally here?
She's really limited in this particular adventure pack simply because the Song of Kings is the only song that we have. So for a cost of 3, and her ability is going to be near useless if you don't need to splash in leadership. You're only getting 2 willpower. Again, that very dangerous 1 hit point. Again, if she's questing, there's a number of treacheries that would kill her outright. So she's definitely a card that becomes very worthwhile by the end of the cycle. Currently, though, if you're just playing the Hunt for Gollum with the core set and this one adventure pack, probably not a necessary inclusion in your deck.
Yeah, it is a little bit frustrating just remembering playing throughout the cycle, waiting for each song to be slowly released, waiting for, say, the Spirit version, the Tactics version. Rivendell Minstrel herself, just like you said, is extremely fragile. I do appreciate that this is the first non-unique ally we've seen since the core set that has 2 willpower, so she is a pretty capable quester. If you've got effects like a Test of Will or perhaps Eleanor to back her up, I can feel a lot better about having her on the table and especially committing her to the quest. But she fetches songs, she thins your deck. She's just a little bit of a steep investment, so if you're only running 1 lore character, it can be a little bit of a tricky decision to say, should I put into play Rivendell Minstrel, or should I save for some sort of healing effect or Forest Snare, something like that. So it's kind of a tough call there.
Yeah, I agree. So that leads us to our final card of this adventure pack, and that is Strider's Path, which is a lore event with a cost of 1. Its response reads, after a location is revealed from the encounter deck, immediately travel to that location without resolving its travel effect. If another location is currently active, return it to the staging area. I think that this card can be useful in some limited situations. There are certainly some locations with really nasty travel effects that perhaps you don't want to have to endure. Maybe that it's a high threat location that you want to clear quickly and get it out of the staging area and make it become the active location so you can get rid of it. But all things considered, I think this is probably a card that I would pass on most of the time when making my decks.
I think the real trick with this one is it's a little bit demanding and it's really pretty situational. So, for example, it still costs 1, and the natural comparison I draw is Secret Paths. For the same amount of resources, it's just you pick a location and it doesn't count its threat. So, of course, traveling to a location has that same effect in that you're basically ignoring the threat. But the problem here is you have to play this as soon as it's revealed from the encounter deck. So if it's already sitting in play, you're out of luck. You're not going to be able to circumvent that travel effect. Another thing is if you already have an active location, this just flips them. It doesn't necessarily do anything. If you, say, had to deal with the effect of Necromancer's Pass, which is choose 2 cards at random from your hand to discard. Maybe if that's brought back into your staging area, you'll have to deal with that again. I think if there's no active location, this is definitely stronger than Secret Paths, but it kind of works against one of the strongest cards in the game at the moment, which is Northern Tracker. So that's definitely a little bit of a red flag there. And really my biggest concern with this card is it really isn't very well suited for the quest it comes out in, which is the Hunt for Gollum, just because there are so many locations in that encounter deck that say, while this location is active, there's this effect, such as you pay additional resources for events or allies. But, if you're playing a solo player game and you're relying on effects like Lorien Guide, maybe this will work out pretty well for you. I just think the more players you add to the table, the more likely you are to have to rely on Northern Tracker, and cards like this just aren't going to be useful enough to include them in your deck. Well, I think that about covers it. We've gone ahead and covered our new hero, Bilbo Baggins, and 9 different new player cards. I guess, do you have any overall thoughts about the strength of these cards or the weakness of these cards?
Sure. I remember way back when this adventure pack came out, it was so long ago, it was delayed by customs twice, if I remember correctly. So we had to wait ages for this adventure pack to come out. And then we get it, and it's a little underwhelming. So I think one thing to keep in mind, and people may or may not know this, is that the adventure pack cycles are developed and designed all at once. And then the player cards are sort of divvied up between the 6 packs for the cycle. So things like the Eagles are coming. You're thinking, why would this even be in the pack when there's only one Eagle card? It's sort of a dead card. It's a waste. Well, perhaps it's FFG's way of sort of teasing us as what's to come to let us know that there will be a bunch of Eagles appearing in the subsequent adventure packs. So a lot of these cards maybe don't seem so great right now. The Rivendell Minstrel, for one, along with the Eagles are coming. But by the end of the cycle, a lot of these cards in this pack and the Conflict at the Carrack become so much better when we are have the entire cycle at our disposal. So I would say a lot of these cards seem underwhelming at first glance, but by the end of Shadows of Mirkwood, a lot of these become so much better.
Definitely. I think this adventure pack is very much kind of a setup for what's to come. The Eagle and Rohan Sphere traits we're going to be seeing much, much more development of. Of course, the song cycle is going to run its course, but I'm very happy with the cards leadership got in this expansion. Bilbo Baggins can be useful, especially with the present Barivore nerf. He's a very useful supply of card advantage. I use him alongside her ever so often. And of course, you can't go wrong with Winged Guardians, so even things like Rivendell Minstrel, I'm very much welcoming that additional willpower. So we'll have to see what else is to come, but I think that about says it for this adventure pack, unless you've got any final thoughts, Matthew?
Nope, that's it.
Alright, so why don't we go ahead and close down this very first adventure pack. So, as always, thank you guys very much for watching. If you've thought of any uses for some of these cards that we've missed, if you've got some different opinions about any of these player cards or our new hero Bilbo Baggins, be sure to let us know in the comments below. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you liked what you saw. Feel free to suggest other content that you'd like to see from us. You can look forward to us actually playing through the Hunt for Gollum scenario in our next video, but until then, we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.